On the other hand, we kind of, on the other hand, our goal is to kind of play with the software part of it. We want to, it might not have come out here, but what we're trying to do is think about software enhancements that could lead to better learning. We don't even care. We care, but we don't think we're good at, we're the people who should be measuring whether they actually impact the learning directly. But we want to say, why don't we try these things, because the concept seems to work, the secondary measures seem to apply. Why don't, other people go out and play with these things? I guess one last thing I want to say is, another conclusion we've come to is we don't sort of believe in the Moodle, Sakai, Blackboard. We don't necessarily want to think about, creating an alternative to that. We just want to be able to create plugins that will add abilities to those particular kinds of tools. Then let people take what they need or what they think might be useful, rather than kind of upsetting those apple carts, which are really difficult. I mean, Blackboard's so well entrenched. Sakai, I don't know, Sakai's sort of a US devised open source package that the universities have built. It's entrenched. You're not going to win that war anyway, so we want to try and enhance those things. So, I'm sorry I took so long. Now he has to go. Okay. Well, anybody else have a question? He did. I didn't let him talk. Yeah. Oh, wait, okay.
I'm quite interested. You have shown a few slides on the models of presenting the research model that practiced by the students.
Right.
And you said about the kernel theories and also artifacts that the students have to come out. And also there are another 2 criteria for that.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm quite interested on that model.
Oh, yeah.
On what ground that for all research that has been done in your graduate school?
Yeah, this is just a way. Actually, yeah, it's not fair to say that that's the way we evaluate the students. It was just a simple way for me to put on one slide, one page, what the research is about. But in the end, what we want the students to do is create an artifact based on a kernel theory and show that the artifact meets the requirements that they define and show that there's some proof of concept there. Those are basically the 3 things that we require. And the 2 of those 3 things come before, as a dissertation proposal, and the last thing comes as a...
So the artifacts can be a framework, basically?
They could be. No, nobody's really... Well, the only one that's sort of done the framework artifact is the gaming dissertation. I just talked about it briefly, the one where the student looked at how gaming, in a gaming environment, can be used to facilitate leadership behaviors. And the model there was the student created this idea of crafting versus creation. We got it up. There's some theory in gaming about that. Crafting means that the game itself constrains the kinds of things that you can do. You can do lots of things, but within the framework of the game. Creation says you can go beyond the framework of the game and do other things that will build additional facility into the game. So he kind of developed a model to say, why are those 2 endpoints realistic? How do they come together? What kinds of situations would they facilitate without really doing it in a software artifact? So,
Some of the theories in developing this.
You want me to talk about them a little more? Or? No.
And does it include any of the learning styles of the students?
We haven't really looked at that. It's a good point, and actually that sort of came out. I forgot your name, but Armin, yeah. We really haven't looked at that because we just don't have the sample size to really try to filter out all these covariances that may exist in the various students. So that could be a factor that washes out a lot of the effects that we're finding. But we just haven't found enough sample size or created experiment. We don't want to create experimental environments to try and tease those things out. But yeah, learning styles is a big issue. And we really admit that. So you have another point?
This second one is a little bit of a simplest question, but since you're taking time going around, I know that you're raising awareness on the issue. Is there anything specific that you're looking for in your trips?
Yeah, I'm just looking for feedback and trying to see what people think of what we're doing, whether, you know, sort of snickering at it or giving, you know, oh yeah, you're on the right track, but we've tried these things, or, you know, anything like that. For example, when I was at Monash, one of the faculty came up to me afterwards and said, well, one of the things you talked about is this idea that you want people to maintain relationships beyond a certain context, like beyond a class. And she said, when you were talking about gaming, shouldn't you think about trying to use gaming itself to build those relationships? Not, you know, she said, what you've been doing are too simplistic, and maybe you should try things that are more proactive. So, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm going to take that back to the lab and see if we could, you know, think of a way of trying to build that into our research. So, good ideas. You can email me after if you want to discuss things or whatever. I just felt like it was a good thing to do to introduce other researchers from around the world to what we've been doing, and I know it's of interest to all educators because, you know, even though our long-term goal is to go beyond the education context, we're really focusing on that right now, and that's why I said this is a good context in which to talk about the educational part of the social learning. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, certainly does.
Good question.
And it's great to have you. The third question is, are you playing around with Second Life as well?
Oh, yeah, we did some playing around with that, and actually, when the student who was doing the gaming part of it was looking at environments, one of the ones he looked at was Second Life. Second Life has its ups and downs, you know, and just not something that happens to him. And the student who was looking at self-directed learning also looked at Second Life. And it just hasn't caught on with our researchers. And there's so many options that, you know, we haven't glommed onto it yet. But it's certainly been a pretty popular environment in some situations, some educational situations. And we're happy to have people do that kind of research. And yeah, that's the other thing about coming around is we want to motivate other people to do this kind of research, get involved, so that, you know, I gave you 3 or 4 or 4 or 5 examples early on about what people have been doing. We want to see many more examples out there. The more there are, we can't do it all by ourselves. It's a huge task, and it may never be, you know, really solved. But our sense is that we want to get more people doing this. So that's another reason to take